Hey folks, and welcome to DevTrends. Today we're gonna talk about CSS Paint API, top JavaScript trends to watch in 2018 and big VSCode release version 1.20. So let's start with CSS Paint API. CSS Paint API is the first part of upcoming low-level CSS specification called Houdini. This specification is enormous effort and collaboration between Google, Mozilla, Apple, Microsoft, Opera and others in order to bring more control to CSS to developers. And this is pretty exciting stuff. It will allow us to programmatically use many features of CSS engines that weren't possible with mere CSS. We'll be able to control almost every aspect of modern browser rendering, paint, layout, compositing, and even more. It can open really endless possibilities for fine-grained optimizations. So the first chunk of Houdini release is CSS Paint API, which is shipped in Chrome 65 by default. And let's see how it works. So let's create a new demo folder for our Houdini demo. Let's make the Houdini demo and cd to it. Okay, and here let's create two files, index.html and special file called worklet.js. So the second name of CSS Paint API is just Paint Worklet, because Worklet is a small file, is pretty similar in design of web worker, but it is created, added to specification in order to make some changes in these browser processes like Paint, for example, here. So let's create index.html with base layout, and here let's create, for example, text area element, and let's make some style. So CSS Paint API is created to have more control of such properties as background image and others. So you can programmatically make images for common HTML elements. So let's create text area selector, and here is special function, new function that is available in CSS Paint API in Chrome 65. It's called Paint, and let it be empty for now. And here is our worklet, CSS Paint worklet, and here we can write a special code in order to make this worklet work. So in order to paint our text area in different style. So there is special syntax, as I've already said. Let's create some, for example, custom painter class, and there is a method of this class which called paint, and it takes 3 arguments. First one is context. This is like if you work with, for example, canvas elements, so this is pretty much similar to canvas elements context. So there are similar methods and similar stuff to it. There is second argument called geometry, is size of our element which we are painting, and there is third argument called properties. We'll see how it works a bit further. So let's start with some basic stuff. Let's, for example, create some square color for our text area. Let it be just text area painter. That's it. So first of all we begin the path, then we add some color. So we switch our fill functionality to, for example, let it be red color. And let's create some rectangle, for example, from 0.0 to like 30 pixels. And then we just fill this space we created with the fill method. So if you ever worked with Canvas API, this is pretty much it. And the last stuff, we call special function called register paint in this worklet file, and just create this painter with custom name, let it be text area, and here is text area painter, our class. So let's save it, and here in the main file, in the main index.html, we add this text area painter we already created here. So in style, like paint text area and background image, and we'll add another script, and here we call a special property called just CSS, so it will be Windows CSS. Here we call paint worklet, and we add this model we already created, worklet.js. So that's it. Let's start our demo from the folder, and let's navigate to localhost 5000. So you can see this is our text area, and this is our background image we created programmatically via CSS Paint API. But this is the very basic example, and there is a very good article about CSS Paint API in Google Developers blog, and there is pretty much examples about CSS API, and some advanced examples exist. So for example, there are a huge example which takes in place custom properties of CSS. So let's just copy it and see how it works in our code. So let's change the code here. So you can see there is another static method called input properties, where we can define custom properties to add in our CSS file, and such properties will be available in the paint method, and you can use the values of these properties from CSS into your program, into a module here. So this model creates a checkerboard background for your text area with dynamic parameters. So we saved it, and here we can now add these parameters. Let's switch to Chrome, and let's add these two parameters in our CSS here. So we can see these are two parameters we use. So the spacing of our checkerboard between rectangles and the size of each rectangle. And here we just change, because this is checkerboard name. Now here we change it to checkerboard. And of course we add this module as well, as usual. Let's save it. And let's reload. So you can see our text area now has a checkerboard background. You can see it here. You can switch on and off. And the most awesome part, that we can handle the spacing between these squares, and we can change the size of these squares by these custom properties. So if you want to check more advanced examples and information about CSS Paint API, the first part of Houdini API, so you definitely need to check this Google Developers blog. And there is also a link about the overall Houdini API. It's called Houdini Demystifying CSS, and it's pretty awesome as well. So these links will be in the description below. You can check it after. So the CSS Paint API is available by default in Chrome 65, which is currently in beta, but soon it will be released and you can check in the stable Chrome. But as for other browsers, they are just not so good in supporting CSS Paint API yet, because Chrome is pushing it forward really. So just for support you can go to caniuse.com and check the coding feature. Let's wait a bit for it to load. CSS Paint API. So you can see it's working draft as for now, and it seems that only Chrome supports it by default, but it's pretty awesome API. So go check it out. We all want to know what to expect from the future. In the past years it has been pretty hard to predict how JavaScript and web would evolve. But apparently the years of fatigue seem to be over, and we have plenty of understanding of where to move and what to use. And of course we do our best to provide you with a clue on what's going on, but if you want a really brief intro into JavaScript Trends of 2018, check this great article on HackerNoon by Ryan Chetrand. In his article he goes through the emergent battle between React and Vue and which one to choose for your next project, through the Next.js to get you simpler React experience coupled with universal app possibilities. Then there is Angular, which is still the framework of choice for some major companies. There is also a sneak peek on the state of functional programming in ReasonML language, GraphQL, bundlers, and more. And this is really awesome way to get the accumulated and concise info about the latest trends of JavaScript. And if you want a deeper dive, there is also study materials at the end of the post. So Microsoft has made a huge shift towards open source in the recent years. This is a win-win step for both sides, for Microsoft itself to earn better reputation and for developers to get awesome tools developed by companies' greatest minds. Among these are TypeScript and VSCode. Both these tools got big updates recently, but let's talk about the later. VSCode has recently hit version 1.20, and this is really huge update with vast amount of cool features. Folks were working on the release for 2 months instead of usual 1 month duration, and it's totally worth it. Let's have a quick look at some of the new features. So let's switch to the terminal first, and let's create some folder. Let's call it VSCode demo, cd to it, and let's create here some files, for example index.html, index.js, and the index.css file, just as an example. Okay, so saving it. And the first major feature of new VS Code is a possibility to select multiple files at once. So this is long-awaited feature, and you can now just select multiple files and perform some operations with them in bulk, like copying, renaming, deleting, like deleting now. So you can see there's no files. So this is the first major feature, and we've been waiting for it for months. Really, even for years, someone. So the next cool feature is improved settings search. So if you go to, for example, user settings, you can search. You can now search the settings by fuzzy search. So you can see there is whole words selected, there are part of words selected, and more. So it greatly improved our user experience. And another cool feature, let's create another file called index.js here. Let's save it. And another cool feature is that you can see some, for example, syntax errors right in your Explorer. So you can see that there will be, if there are some errors or warnings in your code, you can instantly see it in the Explorer view. So you can see our errored file turned red here. So we can fix it and it will become white. So this is also pretty cool and improving our UX. For example, in new VSCode, you can now save large files that are more than 256 megabytes, and VSCode improved handling of these files because of some internal mechanism of file handlers. And there is also a cool feature, you can now use your submodels in VS Code, so you can now properly see and handle your submodels. For example, let's create a repository in our VS Code demo, and let's make some subdirectory. Let's call it sub, and let's cd to it, and let's create another repository here in subdirectory. So before version 1.20, when you were working with your submodels in VS Code, it will just give you an error, some nasty errors. Let's refresh it. But now this is not the case, because let's reload to show there's VS Code. So here is it. So if we now add this subdirectory as a git submodule called sub, for example, submodule add, this set syntax, and we can instantly see that there is submodule label is blue now. And if you, for example, go to the sub directory, let's create some sub.js file here, and you can handle all the git stuff from this submodule, from the command line, command palette, for example, and it will properly handle these files in this subdirectory as submodule. So this is as well a cool feature of new VS Code. There are plenty of features, for example, possibility now to add global snippets to VS Code. For example, you can now create a special global snippets file, and you can, let it be global, for example. And you can specify here some global snippets that are not bound to some specific syntax. Let's see. So you can provide a scope of your snippets here and just write the snippets and use them from all of the scopes at once. There are also some new features like image preview, zoom, terminal screen reader support, some debugging improvements, and many more performance and not only performance improvements in new TypeScript. So this is really great and major release. Of course, all the links will be in the description below, so you can check all the changes in VS Code by yourself and find many useful keys, of course. So that's all for today, folks. All the links are in the description below. Thank you for watching and stay trendy.